How did the residential real estate market do in 2024 and what can we expect in 2025? So with Q4's data coming in from the Urban Redevelopment Authority, it is time to do a full year review of 2024 in order to see how the market has done and also give some of my insights on how 2025 will look like. So let's dive in. Let's first look at the latest developments in the market. The first is that 2024 ended with more new launch sales than 2023, mainly due to the last quarter. In November, 6 new residential launches, Chuan Park, Emerald of Katong, Nava Grove, Collective at One Sophia, Union Square Residences, and the EC called Nova Place, accounted for more than 82% of total new homes in November. If we include the sales from developments like A&BT, Norwood Grand, and Mayor Blue in October and November's new launch sale came in at 3,295 units. This outperformed the 3,049 units sold in the first 9 months of 2024. With such strong new launch sales in the last quarter, this allowed developers to sell 6,469 private units compared with 6,421 in 2023, marking a higher total transacted volume in 2024. So momentum seems to have carried on in 2025, with the Ori, the first new launch in January, selling 86% of total units, averaging at $2,704 per square foot. So where will the new launch market head in 2025? The next development is on interest rates. In September, the US Federal Reserve cut interest rates for the first time since mid of 2022, marking a pivot in their interest rate regime. In December, they decided to cut rates by 0.25%, but they cautioned that rate cuts in 2025 will be slower than previously anticipated. So just a few days ago, the Federal Reserve came out to say that they would not cut rates in January, citing further inflation as well as economic uncertainty from the Trump presidency. So how will this affect home loans rate back here in Singapore? So the last development is with the strong sales in the new launch market, as well as resale HDB prices increasing, will there be new cooling measures on the horizon? Just recently in January, the government came out to say that they will wait for current supply-side measures, such as the increase in the number of BTOs and government land sales to take effect, rather than introducing demand-side cooling measures for now. This is because they are cautious of causing a market downturn to be sharper than what most homeowners would expect. So with these developments in mind, let's look at the market data to not just give a review of how 2024 went, but also to anticipate what could happen in 2025. Now we look at how the different asset classes have done, both by prices and transaction volume. What we can see is that in 2024 alone, the HDB market outperformed the condo as well as landed market, with an increase of 9.7% for the full year. The condo market increased by 4.7%, while the landed market lagged with an increase of 0.9%. So what I want to draw your attention to here is the 15-year growth rate, which gives us a more realistic expectation of how prices should perform in the longer term. Okay, so you can see here that the private market performs at about 4.5% per annum, while the HDB market does about 5.4%. So first is that HDB prices in 2024 have significantly outperformed its longer-term average. If you compare just the 5.4 as well as the 9.7%, it has almost grown by twice its long-term average. So if you're a HDB buyer, I would caution to be careful at this point in time, because you are likely purchasing a resale HDB at a very high price. And especially if you're intending to exit in the next 5 years, there might be some price corrections, or you might not necessarily make as much as you initially thought. The condo market seems to be in line with the 15-year average. And for landed property, if you're intending to enter into the market, I think this is a good time, because the prices have significantly tapered down. At least when you're purchasing it now, you know that you're not chasing a very high market. In fact, once the condo and the HDB markets start to come up, then perhaps in the next few years, you can see some capital appreciation. So another thing that I'll point out here is when you look at full year transaction volumes, compared to 2023, every asset class outperformed last year's transaction volume. So this year we could be coming into an upcycle of the real estate market, where you might see transaction volumes even exceed 2024. Okay, so now let's look at the different asset classes by starting with resale HDB. Okay, island-wide, the average price of the transacted HDB is currently at about $634,000. Okay, so how would I read this information? Is that when we think about average, you can think of it as a 4-room HDB, right? Because 4-room HDB represents the largest number of HDBs in the market. Okay, so I would interpret it as the average price of a 4-room HDB island-wide is $634K. That's what you should expect to pay okay, if on average, if you're looking at a 4-room HDB resale flat. However, there are price differentials depending on which neighborhood that you're looking at. For example, if you want something in the central area, the average 4-room HDB is already almost $1 million. Okay, whereas let's say if you are looking at a place like Punggol, right, the average is about $660,000. So at this point in time, some people might say, hey, you know, what about like places like Toa Payoh, Bishan, Ang Mo Kio, right? How is it that the average prices are only like this? When you know you've heard of news articles whereby they say, hey, one over million HDB flats transacted in these neighborhoods. That's not wrong, okay? But we must remember that if you look at the entire neighborhood as a whole, places like Toa Payoh, Bishan, and Ang Mo Kio are actually very old estates. What you see transacted, the $1 million HDB flats, they represent a smaller proportion of the entire neighborhood. So yes, that will skew the data upwards, but because the majority of the estate is old, that will also cause the price in the neighborhood to come down. Whereas newer estates, for example Punggol, you see that the average price is higher, but that's also because the average age of a Punggol HDB flat is newer than some of these older estates like Ang Mo Kio, Bishan, and Toa Payoh. When you look at the condo market, so this is including both new launch and resale properties, the average per square foot island-wide is already crossing about $2,000 per square foot. So you can see that for some districts like District 1, District 6, where they record numbers of above $2,800 per square foot, some of which is skewed because in Q4 alone, there were a lot of new launch sales, right? So I'll take it with a pinch of salt, especially if the district had a strong new launch sales momentum. Right? If you go into the resale market, likely you will find things that are cheaper than the average transacted in Q4 of 2024. So this number for Q4 of 2024 is likely on the higher end. Okay, but what we are concerned with here is the spillover effect. Right? If, for example, sellers see that new launches can sell at these kind of numbers, $2,800, $3,000 per square foot, why would they then list their properties at a much lower price? Lastly, let's look at the landed market. Okay, the data that I put out is only for freehold. So 999 or freehold landed transacted by district in Q4 of 2024. So I split them according to the different types of landed property, terrace house, semi-D, and detached property. Right? For those districts that you see a dash, it means that there was just no transaction in Q4 of 2024. However, given all of the transactions here, in the different districts, the average price of a freehold terrace is about $4.4 million, the semi-D is about 6.6, and the detached properties is already crossing $14 million. So the thing about the landed properties is that it also depends on what is the size of the land plot. So there are certain variabilities. However, I also believe that there's also some market norms of what people expect of a terrace house, of what people expect of a proper semi-D, and also a detached property. So these are just some benchmarks that you can use if you're looking in the market hunting for a landed property. And then of course you can pause the video at any time, and in particular here, if you're looking at purchasing a landed property from a particular district. Given the distribution of landed properties in Singapore, good districts to look for an entry-level private property would be District 19, which is your Serangoon, Kovan area, District 16, which is your Upper East Coast and Bedok South area, as well as District 21. So if I were looking to purchase a landed property, the transacted prices of these three districts will be what I will be looking at. So the next slide is just to show you the list of different districts and what are the different neighborhoods. Right, so you can pause the video right here, you can go back if you want to look at which neighborhood belongs to which particular district. Now let's take a look at the rental market. So across all the three asset classes, you can see that for 2024, the private properties recorded a full year decline in rentals, while HDB increased by 3.2%. So if you evaluate relative to its longer term average, so here I take a 10-year average because we don't have HDB rental data before Q4 of 2011, right? But I think 10 years is a good enough time for it to be considered a longer term average. So you can see that the rental market generally has slowed down quite a lot, right? Even though HDB rentals have grown by 3.2%, the longer term average is for it to grow 5.1% per annum. Okay, and then for landed and condos, they are severely underperforming relative to a longer term average. Alright. But also one thing that I'll caution right here is that for the majority of the 2010s and all the way up to COVID 2020, the rental market didn't see much growth. So will rentals then continue to grow at this amount? Not sure. Okay, but I think what is quite certain is that compared to this steep growth over here post-COVID, you should see that rentals will start to come down, and it has come down for the private market in 2024, because this growth here is an anomaly, especially when you take into account a longer term time period since 2011. The next slide is just looking at condo rentals and breaking it down into the OCR, RCR and CCR region. Okay, across all three regions, you can see that there is a decline. Okay, but there's also some evidence that the decline is slowly plateauing. Okay, what's important here is if you're a landlord, right, and you hold a property, the average per square foot transacted, let's say in the core central region market, is $5.73 per square foot. Right? The average for the RCR region is $5.40, and the average for the OCR region is $4.45. So for example, if you have purchased a new property in the CCR market and you're looking at renting out the property at $8 or $9 per square foot, how many of such buyers are there, given that the average transacted per square foot is $5.73? So these are some considerations. I think if you have purchased a new CCR property and you intended for rental, then it's going to take a longer time for you to secure a tenant, right? Given that the majority of the market is not valuing the rentals at $8, $9 per square foot. Okay. That being said, when I looked at rentals in the Orchard Boulevard area, for example, there are transactions that have gone for north of $10 per square foot. So my point here is that when you consider the broad market, what people are willing to pay right now are these numbers. But of course, given the locational attributes, right, we still have to look at the different regions, the smaller regions, in order to determine whether or not an asset is worth purchasing and whether or not you can command the rental that was previously transacted. The next thing that I'll point out also is that actually for full year transaction volume, right, it has already exceeded 2023. So similar to the sale and purchase market, we might be going into an upcycle where you see transaction volumes this year exceeding last year's transaction volume. Okay, so let's take a look now at new supply. So new supply is important to understand because when the government chooses to increase supply, essentially it is also a cooling measure but on the supply side. Back to the news article that I was referring to earlier, where Desmond Lee said that they want the effects of the new supply to come in before introducing any demand side cooling measures. So on the left, what I've drawn is the new supply for the HDB market, and then on the right is the new supply for the new launch market. So this year alone, they are launching under 20,000 BTO units. If I'm not wrong, it's about 18,000 units. Okay, but generally we are still in a phase whereby there's going to be an increase in supply of BTOs. Right? So given that there's an increase in supply of BTOs, and given that the resale market last year has done pretty strong, this gives more reason for you, if you're a resale HDB buyer, to be even more careful. Because basically, the more supply that's coming into the market, the more competitively priced your unit has to be 5 years down the road after it MOPs. In the private market, the government releases land through the Government Land Sales Program. So in the first half of 2025, they have committed to increasing north of 8,000 units. How it works is that they will launch new land for sale every 6 months. Okay, so you can expect if they continue to launch the same number of units for the second half, the total full year supply that is launched in the private market could exceed 16,000 units, right? But that remains to be seen because they have not committed on how much that they want to release in the second half of 2025. However, I've highlighted 2024. Why? It's because unlike the BTO market where whatever that they release, then they'll start to sell. When the government releases land, there will be a time period at which developers will have to bid for it, and then only after about 1.5 years, then all of these units will come into the market to be sold at show flats. Right, so this year, you should see the units that were bidded and won by developers in 2024 or even late 2023 coming into the market. When we look at the secondary market, these are newly MOP and TOP units. MOP for resale HDBs and TOP for the condos. Okay, why is this important? This is important because there are buyers out there who need a place to stay and they only want to purchase new move-in properties, right? So this is where the newly MOP flats and TOP condos come into play. On the left, when we look at the number of MOP flats available, you will see that this year it's the lowest in the past 8 years. Right? So what that means is that there is room still for resale HDB prices to go up, okay, because there's just going to be lesser resale HDBs in the market. Yes, this effect will be countered by the increase in BTO supply, right? But having lesser MOP flats will cause an upward price pressure nonetheless. Okay, when we look at the condo market, it is also a similar picture. The number of TOP units in 2025 is also lowest in the past 3 years. If you're looking for a newly TOP'd resale unit, you will likely have lesser choices and you might either go for the newer properties. If not, then if you can't wait, then you'll find yourself going for the older properties, perhaps in 2023 or even 2022 when there was a relatively higher supply. Moving forward into 2026 to 2028, you'll see that we are also moving into an up supply in the condo market. Right, so this has also implications depending on your property portfolio. So feel free to drop me a DM if you'd like to discuss. Okay, let's talk a bit about interest rates. So earlier on, I mentioned about how the US Fed has said that we are in a phase whereby interest rates will go down, but we will not go down too quickly. Okay, and this is what you see in the latest dot plot. Right, we ended the year 2024 at 4.25%. Okay, they are expecting now to end the year in 3.75% instead of the earlier predicted interest rate of about 3.25%. Okay, and then in 2026, we should go down to 3.25%, and then 2027, 3%. Okay, however, what's important to also understand is that this is the US interest rate, right? How does Singapore's home loan rates follow? Generally, we do follow the curve, but the extent at which the Singapore interest rate comes down is slightly different. Okay, so what you see on the right is a projection. Okay, my projection of how variable home loan rates in Singapore will shift as a result of decreasing interest rates in the United States. So currently, variable home loan rates are at 3.31%. I expect that by the end of 2025, it will be dropped to 2.81, and then 2.3, and 2.06. But given that the Fed has already flip-flopped on this on a few times, I think what's important is to cater for some buffer. Broadly, the direction is that it's going down. However, the extent at which it comes down is anybody's guess. So what's important is to do your finances and ensure that there's sufficient buffer in place. Now let's take a look at income and population numbers. So on the left, you see the monthly household income of the top 30% of residences. So why did I look at just the top 30%? Right, currently, about 78% of households live in HDB, while the remaining 22% live in some form of private housing. So technically, private housing will be catered to the top 20% of income earners. Okay, but I've included the top 30% just to show you an indication of what a household earning $14,000 can potentially afford in the private market. Okay, so if you look across all three bands, you will see that compared to 2009, their incomes have increased. Okay. Currently, the top 30%, to be top 30%, you'll be earning about, the household will be earning about $14,000, and then to be top 20% is about 16.8, and the top 10% is earning about 24.7. Okay, and for total population, you will see that the total population of residents, which include your Singaporeans and PRs who are looking to purchase properties, has gone up from about 3.7 in 2009 and today slightly under 4.2 million people. So the broad takeaway is that there are more people who are getting richer and therefore able to buy properties. Knowing the income as well as the population data, what I've then done is to look at the different age groups to see how much that someone can potentially afford, assuming that he's at the top 30%, top 20%, or top 10%. Okay, so for example, someone within the age group of 30 to 34 earning a top 20% in household income can afford a $2.36 million property, which in today's market, you can easily buy a resale 3-bedder in the outside central region. Whereas someone who is top 30% can also afford almost a $2 million property. Right, these are some of the assumptions that I've made to come up with this number. Okay, at this point in time, some of you might say, hey, but just because their income can afford this doesn't mean that they can have the down payment necessary, right? Well, I agree that you need the down payment, but I also believe that down payment is also based on someone's discretionary spending. Right? It depends on his or her lifestyle. You will have people who spend a disproportionate amount of income and do not save much, and therefore, even though their income can afford a 2.36 million, they might just not have the savings necessary to make the down payment. That is possible, right? But what we can do then is we can scale down these numbers to make it more conservative. Right? I think still the data shows that your younger group of people, 30 to 39 years old, you can earning a top 20% income, I think you can still afford a $2 million property easily. Okay, so these are some implications if you're looking to purchase a private property. On affordability, anything under $2 million for a household is actually quite achievable. Then it's a matter of what is the location, what is the layout, and what are the attributes of the development. Whether someone will be purchasing a bigger property on the outskirts or a smaller property in the central region. For example, you're purchasing a 3 over million property, you have to know that you're targeting a smaller group of people, in particular the top 10%. And then we have to think about where these top 10% of folks will actually be and whether or not your property will be something that a future buyer in this income bracket would want. So another way to look at this data is that what if it's for singles? A quick way is just to divide this maximum purchase price by 2. Since on average, a household would have 2 income earners. Right? So if you're looking to buy, let's say, a 1-bedder, right? Someone in the top 30% who is in this age range can afford at least a $1 million 1-bedder property. If you're thinking of purchasing like a 1-bedder in the core central region, which is about 1.5 million, then we have to look at whether or not that development is something that someone in this income bracket would be likely to pay. Okay, so that's how I interpret the data. On the leftmost column, you see population growth. So I did a separate YouTube video that talks about how Singapore population growth has changed among the different age groups. Broadly, apart from your aging population, which accounts for the largest number of population growth, the people that are aged 30 to 39 have also grown by quite a significant amount compared to 2020. So if you can have a look at that video if you're interested. So what can we expect in summary moving into 2025? I think that there are more reasons for prices to increase in 2025, and especially it might be a good time to purchase landed properties given that the price increase has slowed down. If you're someone that's looking to purchase a resale HDB, I think now it's tricky, right? Because of just how quickly HDB prices have increased, not just in 2024, but even in 2023 and 2022 alone. You'll actually be purchasing at a multiple of its long-term price growth. Investor appetite could also increase as we are generally heading into a declining interest rate environment, and if your rental starts to bottom out, which we see some evidence of, but we're not sure yet. For a new launch segment, I think given the strong sales, don't expect developers to be cutting prices. They might have a proportion of units at the start with a very attractive starting price. So if you have a good ballot number for development, I think it would be good to pull the trigger and purchase a unit. That's all I have. Wishing all of you a fantastic quarter ahead. If you have any questions or if you'd like to discuss on your property portfolio, message me, DM me, and I'll speak to you guys soon.